Hello, everybody. This is Adam Shoemaker, rector here at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church in Charleston, South Carolina. And I'm here on this Wednesday afternoon to pray with you using the words of Psalm number 78, which is a very, very long psalm. Some psalms are longer than others. Psalm 78 is so long, it is broken up into two parts. And so I've decided to read the second part of Psalm 78 for you today, which begins on page 698 in the Book of Common Prayer. How often the people disobeyed him in the wilderness and offended him in the desert. Again and again they tempted God and provoked the Holy One of Israel. They did not remember his power and the day when he ransomed them from the enemy, how he wrought his signs in Egypt and his omens in the field of Zoan. He turned their rivers into blood so that they could not drink of their streams. He sent swarms of flies among them, which ate them up, and frogs which destroyed them. He gave their crops to the caterpillar, the fruit of their toil to the locust. He killed their vines with hail and their sycamores with frost. He delivered their cattle to hailstones and their livestock to hot thunderbolts. He poured out upon them his blazing anger, fury, indignation, and distress, a troop of destroying angels. He gave full rein to his anger. He did not spare their souls from death, but delivered their lives to the plague. He struck down all the firstborn of Egypt, the flower of manhood in the dwellings of Ham. He led out his people like sheep and guided them in the wilderness like a flock. He led them to safety, and they were not afraid, but the sea overwhelmed their enemies. He brought them to his holy land, the mountain his right hand had won. He drove out the Canaanites before them and appointed an inheritance to them by lot. He made the tribes of Israel to dwell in their tents, but they tested the Most High God and defied him and did not keep his commandments. They turned away and were disloyal like their fathers. They were undependable like a warped bow. They grieved him with their hill altars and provoked his displeasure with their idols. When God heard this, he was angry and utterly rejected Israel. He forsook the shrine at Shiloh, the tabernacle where he had lived among his people. He delivered the ark into captivity, his glory into the adversary's hand. He gave his people to the sword and was angered against his inheritance. The fire consumed their young men. There were no wedding songs for their maidens. Their priests fell by the sword, and their widows made no lamentation. Then the Lord woke as though from sleep, like a warrior refreshed with wine. He struck his enemies on the backside and put them to perpetual shame. He rejected the tent of Joseph and did not choose the tribe of Ephraim. He chose instead the tribe of Judah and Mount Zion, which he loved. He built his sanctuary like the heights of heaven, like the earth which he founded forever. He chose David, his servant, and took him away from the sheepfolds. He brought him from following the ewes to be a shepherd over Jacob, his people, and over Israel, his inheritance. So he shepherded them with a faithful and true heart and guided them with the skillfulness of his hands. This second portion of the 78th Psalm takes us through a significant part of Israel's story. Takes us through God liberating the Israelites from bondage in Egypt, taking them to the promised land, as well as Israel falling away from God, disobeying God, which calls to mind how I once heard it said that the Bible is in itself a love story, a story of God striving to be in relationship with us again and again and again, even when we fall away, even when we fall short of being who we've been created to be. And so this second portion of the 78th Psalm reminds me to take the long view of things, to step back and appreciate the long arc of God's salvation story, of which we are only a part, and to trust amid the ups and downs of this life that God's love will continue to see us through, that God will continue to strive to be in relationship with us, and when we fall short, we can always return back to God, and we'll always be welcomed back into God's loving embrace. We'll be back with you tomorrow to pray using the words of Psalm 79. In the meantime, be safe, be well, wear your mask, and you keep the faith.